Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast. Good morning. It's Thursday, the 13th of November. I'm Caroline Hepke in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, the longest shutdown in US history comes to an end, but fully reopening the government could still take weeks.
The EU prepares to present the US with its plan to move this summer's trade deal forwards, focused on tariff relief and market access.
Plus, going off-brand, why Russian trademark poachers are targeting the likes of Armani, Amazon and Calvin Klein.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
The US government shutdown has come to an end after President Trump signed off on a temporary funding bill that was passed earlier by the House of Representatives. It marks the official conclusion to a 43-day impasse that halted food aid to millions of households, cancelled thousands of flights and forced federal workers to go unpaid for more than a month. Speaking as he signed the bill into law, President Trump took aim at his political opponents.
For the past 43 days, Democrats in Congress shut down the government of the United States in an attempt to extort American taxpayers.
President Trump was referring there to the fact that Democrats had largely opposed the bill to reopen the government because it didn't include their central demand to renew healthcare subsidies.
Now, the interim spending package provides funding until the end of January, and it means that the US government can begin to resume normal operations, with US federal workers expected back on the job starting on Thursday. However, it could still take days or even weeks for the federal bureaucracy to fully restart and clear the backlog after being closed since October. Speaking earlier on Wednesday, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also conceded that the October jobs and consumer price index reports are now unlikely to ever be released as a result of the shutdown.
The European Union is set to present a proposal to the US later this month to enact the next phase of a trade agreement reached this summer. The so-called Implementation Action Plan focuses on areas including tariffs and market access for the world's largest trading relationship. Bloomberg's Freddie Fulston has more.
The deal agreed in August set a 15% tariff on most, but not all, EU goods entering the US. Now, the EU is seeking lower rates for several additional goods, including wines and spirits. It also wants a quota system that would reduce the 50% tariff on some steel and aluminium exports, and assurances that it won't be hit by higher sectoral duties in the future. The proposal comes in response to Washington's demand for a legally binding plan to revise EU regulations, which it says hurt US businesses. In London, Freddie Fulston, Bloomberg Radio.
Top trade negotiators from Switzerland are heading to Washington to complete negotiations on a trade deal aimed at lowering the 39% tariff rate on Swiss goods. Bloomberg understands the delegation is hoping to cut US duties on products including watches and chocolate to 15%. President Trump confirmed that his administration was, quote, working on a deal to get their tariffs a little bit lower. It is unclear if a final deal will be reached.
The UK Treasury officials believe that Rachel Reeves could get billions of pounds of extra room in her upcoming budget thanks to her plan to cut household bills and bring down inflation. Sources tell us the Chancellor's team have asked the government's fiscal watchdog to take into account measures on energy bills, rail fares and other regulated prices in its budget forecast. With more, here's Bloomberg's Chris Pitt.
The Treasury's argument is that lower inflation will mean lower interest rates and therefore lower borrowing costs. We understand that the Office for Budget Responsibility is considering the Treasury's claim, and according to calculations by Bloomberg Economics, if they recognise the forecast, it could give Reeves an extra £6 billion. And the Chancellor will need every penny of that to help her fill her budget hole of as much as $35 billion, caused by an anticipated growth downgrade, higher borrowing costs and policy U-turns. The reporting comes as the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors warned that the property market is in a holding pattern, amid speculation that Reeves will target housing in her budget, alongside expectations for broader tax hikes. In London, Chris Pitt, Bloomberg Radio.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has called for unity after revelations of an alleged leadership challenge against him seem to have backfired. The Labour Party leader said that he had not authorised media briefings against the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, who allies anonymously accused of trying to get rid of Starmer. Answering questions in Parliament yesterday, Starmer downplayed rumours of a government rift.
My focus each and every day is on rebuilding and renewing our country. Let me be absolutely clear. Any attack on any member of my cabinet is completely unacceptable.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer speaking there. Streeting, one of the best-known members of the cabinet, denied plotting to get rid of his boss and professed loyalty to Starmer. Now, according to Labour rules, rivals for the premiership must have a seat in Parliament and nominations from 20% of the parliamentary party. Candidates must also be nominated by a minimum of 5% of constituency parties or 3 Labour affiliates, 2 of which must be trade unions.
And in the United States, Democrats are continuing to pressure President Trump over his ties to the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. That's after new emails released by a congressional committee showed Epstein appearing to allege Trump spent hours with one of his victims. Democrats and some Republicans are calling for all Epstein files to be released, but the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the administration is already helping the investigations.
This administration has done more with respect to transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein than any administration ever. In fact, this administration, the Department of Justice, has turned over tens of thousands of documents to the American people. We are cooperating and showing support for the House Oversight Committee.
Caroline Leavitt speaking there. Following the document's publication, Arizona Democrat Adelita Grijalva provided the decisive signature on a petition forcing a vote on legislation to compel the Justice Department to release any Epstein files. House Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters he will bring the bill to a vote next week.
Now, those are our top stories for you this morning. Looking at the markets, so global stocks currently a little bit lower. Shares have seen 3 days of gains. Gold and silver poised for a fresh push higher now that we have the end of the US government shutdown. Gold is up by 0.4%. Stock futures are also mostly higher this morning, up 0.4 for the Euro Stoxx 50 futures, 0.2 higher for the S&P 500. Brent crude futures, though, lower, 0.1%. OPEC revealing the long-awaited surplus which has emerged in oil markets. Cisco surging after market for their share price after they boosted 2026 forecasts. Those are the markets.
In a moment, more on the end of the US government shutdown, plus how some of the world's biggest brands are losing their trademarks in Russia. But another story that has us dreaming this morning of rest and relaxation, Caroline. Our pursuits correspondent Sarah Rappaport has been pursuing wellness, and good luck to her, in one of Europe's oldest spa towns. She's been to Baden-Baden on the edge of the Black Forest in Germany and the newly reopened Brenner's Park Hotel and Spa. It's one of those Belle Epoque destinations, dates back to 1872. Its new owners, whose other hotels include Le Bristol in Paris, have given it a loving renovation. Now, this is big money to be made in wellness destinations, as we know. And Sarah's review covers both the old and new treatments that are being offered in this. She said she tried a vitamin IV and didn't really feel any different afterwards, which I found quite refreshing. It
was, yes, her description was very refreshing. The photographs are stunning in her piece, and wow, what a lovely thing to be able to do. I mean, the hotel is part of the same group as the Hotel du Cap Eden Rock. I mean, anybody who has ever seen that hotel understands, the kind of level of luxury. I didn't see any price tags in Sarah's story. But I love the fact that she also talks about the secret ingredient being spending time in nature and spending time in water, swimming, and but it did make me think of the holidays. And it's not all sort of carrots and, everything has to be good for you as well. The restaurant does serve things like black forest chicken with creamy potatoes. Local Riesling was mentioned as well. It does sound like my sort of trip. I'll have to be asking Sarah about that, but you'll find a link to that story in our podcast show notes. Okay. Back to more serious matters. The US president has signed the bill ending the government shutdown after a record 43 days. Let's get into what it means now with Bloomberg TV anchor Kriti Gupta. Good morning. Well, you look fresh as ever, Kriti. No holidays required. In practical terms, the shutdown is officially over. How long will it take then for the US government and its operations to get back up and running?
Well, according to the president of the United States, immediately he's put out an order that says as of November 13th, which is, of course, today that you are going to need this to all the agencies that do get or rely on federal funding and some of the moves from Congress need to start working today. That includes bringing all the workers back into the office. The reality of it is a little bit different. So I'm going to go piece by piece here. When it comes to the data, which is I think what a lot of our audience is looking for, the jobs data, CPI numbers, etc., those might take some time. There's some speculation that we may actually get some sort of numbers coming out on Friday if the BLS is ready to go. You heard Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, yesterday say that it's actually unlikely that those numbers will never be released. She said that previously about the October inflation report. This is the first time she's making those comments about the October jobs number. And again, this is a record long shutdown that we've just come out of. So this is kind of unventured territory in terms of what data set we actually get. That's the data. On the other hand, the other key sticking piece is how many federal workers are actually coming back to Washington, because as a part of the shutdown plans, part of the agreements that were included were you stay employed for the furloughed workers, but you can use extra comp time. You can use teleworking. The actual return to office piece could be a little bit more extended. That's something that the federal agencies are in conflict with when it comes to the administration itself. The third wave of that, though, is what's going on with air traffic. We are a couple of, I want to say 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving in the United States. So air traffic controllers are even more needed than before. And this shutdown, again, record-long shutdown has prompted a wave of early retirements from a lot of air traffic controllers amid a time where there are already staff shortages and payment issues. So one of the key questions now for the Transportation Secretary is simply how quickly can we get all those canceled flights back on the agenda?
What about this was the next steps in this as well? The bill extends government funding until the end of January for most agencies. How should we expect the political debate to continue from here?
It is all about the A word, which is affordability, but it's also about healthcare extensions. This is one of the key sticking points in terms of actually getting this bill across, where Republicans had said we're not even going to engage on the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, healthcare extensions, unless you reopen the government. And so now that the government is reopened, you can expect Democrats, and you heard a key voice in the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries, talk about the fact that they're actually going to push for an ACA extension of 3 years. What this means for a global audience, though, is this is actually a massive inflationary input. If you don't have these healthcare extensions, it just means that more Americans have to pay out of pocket for some of these healthcare benefits that they're currently getting right now. And that is going to be something that shows up in things like CPI, not immediately, but say in 6-8 months' time when this all happens. That being said, that's on the agenda. But again, the clock is ticking because we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas, we have the New Year, and then it's January 30th.
Yeah, absolutely. Kriti, thank you so much for being with us this morning, taking us through the denouement, the ending of the US government shutdown. Bloomberg TV anchor Kriti Gupta. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this.
Some of the world's best known brands, from Armani to Amazon, are falling prey to trademark poachers in Russia. Russian law allows any trademark that's unused for 3 years to be cancelled, so it's a risk that's becoming more acute as the country's economic isolation deepens. Our markets editor Natasha Doff has been writing about this, and she joins us for more this morning. Natasha, first of all, what exactly is trademark poaching?
Trademark poaching is essentially when a company or an individual opportunistically takes over the rights to a trademark in a given country, either to use the branding on its own goods or perhaps in the hope that they might be able to sell the rights on or back to the company. It's perfectly within the confines of the law and often happens when a country is going through a period of economic isolation or in sanctions, a bit like Russia is now. And in Russia's case, as is well known, hundreds of well-known international companies fled in 2022, shortly after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Most of those companies held on to their trademarks, which are valid for 10 years, in the hope that someday they might want to go back. But now that they've been inactive for 3 years, there's a risk that third parties can come and make claims for those trademarks.
So then what's the scale of this activity in Russia? How have you thought about it? What sort of companies are being affected?
We did an in-depth analysis of all of the legal documents that have been filed to Russia's International Property Court since 2024. And we found at least 300 claims against big foreign companies, including well-known brands such as Calvin Klein and Sheraton. There were a lot of consumer names in there, as you might imagine. Most of those claims are ongoing. Some have been thrown out, but some have been approved, including just last week, Victoria's Secret, the big lingerie chain, lost a few of its trademarks. Ericsson has lost a few. Sheraton.
Do companies have any recourse against this if they do end up losing their trademarks?
There's one option, which is when there's just this risk of losing it. One option is to extend your current trademark ahead of time, and that buys you a little bit more time. If you end up losing your trademark, it's a very difficult situation. So history is littered with examples of very expensive cases, things like Apple fighting for its iPad trademark in Hong Kong. I think they had to pay in the millions. It's also happened in Russia before in the 1990s. A trademark squatter was sitting on Starbucks' trademark for quite a long time, and they only got that back in the early 2000s. So it's a very risky situation, even though a lot of these companies maybe don't immediately want to go back to Russia.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.